And I know you have some, I don't want to use the word amazing, but some, some when we have discussed some of those stories, right? But and you have some experience with insurance troubles slash, So let's talk liability here. Let's talk insurance here. Take a little deeper dive into that side of the things. How are you covering yourself as a co-host? How are you covering that liability issue for the property owner and the guest, apart from the Airbnb coverage that's available out there?
So I think of liability and insurance separately. So you have home insurance, which you need to make sure that you have a policy that allows short-term rentals. She submitted a claim and her insurance came back and said, nope, we found your Airbnb listing, and denied the entire claim, even though a tree falling has absolutely nothing to do with guests. So your home has to be insured with something that does allow for short-term rentals, but then your business needs to be insured for liability and, people falling and getting hurt. For my co-hosting side, I use Wister, Wister. They are under the umbrella of Proper Insurance. So Wister specifically covers co-hosts and property managers in case of being sued. I know there's a growing kind of mentality or thought of self-insuring, which I've actually talked to a couple of people about, but I don't think it quite fits my business, where you charge the guest a little more, but you put it into kind of a pot and you keep that pot on the side in case there's an insurance claim. We have a climbing rock wall in the loft of this space. We have hot tubs at our listings. I think those are higher items that, self-insuring wouldn't really make sense. And so then there's also liability, like commercial liability for the rentals. And that's what you get more into when you talk about hot tubs and climbing walls and having guests slip and fall. I will say Proper Insurance, who I personally don't use, but they are the Cadillac of insurance for short-term rentals. And what's cool about Proper is they've actually combined that liability and the home insurance side. So they provide your home insurance and they provide your commercial liability. So that's awesome. Otherwise, you have to get separate policies, which is what I've had to do, mainly because Proper denied my rock wall. So,
Well, but property is also quite expensive, and
yes.
average homeowner, if they're comparing their homeowner's policy along with short-term rental endorsement or a rider, it's roughly in the range of $900 to $1,200, or for bigger properties it could be $1,500, $1,800. But the proper insurance for the same property, at least every time asked them for a quote, it came 2 or 2.5x of the regular insurance.
But that's
So,
because you're only comparing one side of the policy. That's why I think of home insurance and liability as two separate policies. You can't just say they're all insurance, because if a tree
true.
falls on your house, that's home insurance. But if a person falls down your stairs, that's liability. Proper covers both. So if you just get a regular home policy that, has an endorsement, sometimes they will have a little bit of liability coverage in there, but often they don't for short-term renters.
So what I'm doing is I have this in my policies. I have home insurance, which also has a liability. I think it's 300,000 or half a million
Mhm.
dollars, something like that. And then on top of that, I have umbrella. So the idea is that you got this, and then umbrella should pick up if something is, falls through the crack or the bigger than what the homeowner's policy is covering. Is there any other product out there other than this, other than going the proper route, which is proper, or this home insurance and umbrella kind of a mix that at, at least I'm doing, or a lot of people are doing that as well.
So the only hesitation that I have there, and this comes from personal experience, unfortunately, I was carrying a $5 million umbrella policy for liability for, I don't know, over 10 years probably. Found that my umbrella policy only steps in when the rest of your insurance, is maxed out. So let's say you have a $500,000 liability policy on the house, right, through your home insurance, and they sue you for $1 million. You would think that your umbrella is going to step in, right? Mine did not, because I did not have commercial umbrella insurance. Because a short-term rental is a commercial enterprise, none of it was covered. Long story short.
So for the homes that are not under proper, now do you have a commercial umbrella policy for them? Is that how you're covering that? I mean, I'm just trying to understand what's your strategy now? Because like for example, this particular home or this listing has a climbing wall and proper denied you.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the route that you're taking for this one?
So we had to hire an attorney to create a release of liability and a waiver form, which was a couple $1,000s to get one created. We have to be much stricter on who rents. So we can't do instant book. We send them the documentation for them to sign electronically. They have to send us the license of every single person above the age of 18 that will be on the property, as well as documentation for any minors that will be on the property, and release of waivers for them that are completed by a parent or guardian. So we opened a whole can of worms.
By
and it
adding
makes it
the
much more difficult.
climbing wall.
Yes. And then since we were already doing the climbing wall, we went ahead and included the hot tub and just any liability on the property in that waiver. But that makes things much, much more difficult. And I have to go through, steps A, B, C, D, E before I can actually approve and make sure they're staying, and then keep the reservation versus having to cancel it because for whatever reason they don't meet the requirements.
Well, rock climbing wall is slightly different because not a lot of homes have it.
Mm-hmm.
But the other amenity that you just mentioned, hot tub, is a very common amenity nowadays with Airbnbs. So what kind of extra liability concern are you envisioning with that? Because your homeowner's insurance should pick that up. No, if you let them know that I'm installing a hot tub at my place.
It depends on the policy. And it depends on the policy whether or not they cover a short-term rental guest using said hot tub. So for instance, we had a $300,000 home insurance policy on our home. This was prior to us renting on Airbnb. We were still fixing up the inside, but I was using Sniff Spot and renting the yard. Got to make my dollars where I can. And then my insurance actually sent me a letter that said, we are covering like certain guests if they're your guest, but if they are paying guests, that's now commercial. If someone falls and hurts themselves on Sniff Spot or gets bit by a dog because it's a dog park, we are not covering that. So once there's an exchange of money, it's no longer just a guest in your home. This is a commercial operation. One, I made sure that the owners listed my business as an additional insured on their policy. So, and actually 3 things, but that kind of went along with it. 2, I made sure that they had a policy that covers short-term rentals. So first you have to get something with a short-term rental endorsement. Then I made sure that my business, Meta Capital, is an additional insured on their policy, which is more money, but so it's not the owner that's operating commercially. And then the third step was getting Wister, which is that co-hosting kind of just liability policy.
Yeah, but let's take it a step back, right? I'm still trying to understand one thing here. So you got an insurance policy that is for the home, like a regular homeowner's policy, and you got the short-term rental endorsement or the rider. Now, the technically insurance company knows that short-term rentals means a paying guest. So in that sense, it's commercial in nature. And in that sense, it should be covering the general liability.
It should.
But it's not?
Not necessarily.
All right. So then I think for our viewers, our listeners, what questions should they be asking their insurance agent slash company to make sure that they are doing the things the right way, or change the insurance company, right? Based on the answer.
Grill your insurance company and give them every worst case scenario possible. If someone comes to my property and a neighbor's dog gets out and bites them on my property, is that covered? If someone falls down the stairs, if someone drowns in my hot tub, if someone, breaks their back on whatever, and try to find a scenario where they say, no, that's not covered. And then I like to follow up with an email with those exact examples, and I get in writing that those would be covered. So, for instance, Proper denied us for this cabin because of the rock climbing wall. They said it's too much liability. We went with Steadily, which is another one that's very well known in the short-term rental industry. So Steadily is more of that homeowner's policy with a short-term rental endorsement, but they do kind of specialize in short-term rentals. So they do cover a little bit more than like Travelers, which is what we have at our personal home. And then I spoke to the guy. I told him exactly what we were doing. I sent photos to him. After he said everything would be covered because of our waivers and our release of liabilities, then I sent him an email attaching copies of those with PDFs and saying, please confirm in writing that this is enough coverage and that we would not, run into a snafu in the future if there was an issue. And I made sure to get that answer before ever allowing a guest here.
Yeah, so that kind of went into your binder. Great. Now, there are also products that you can buy on per booking basis. Are you using any of those, like waivers, Superhog, the Rental Guardian?
Yeah, I've looked into a couple. Superhog was probably my favorite if I was going to do one.
Yeah, but Superhog covers more than liability then, because
right. They also cover damages.
Damages and stuff. Okay, great.
And I always, in a case like that, I always present it to the owner and say, here is a product that we can go with. You let me know. The same way that I do with a door lock. Here's the one that I recommend. If you choose not to and you have to suffer the consequences, at the end of the day, it's your property.